live. All right, so we are live. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to I Don't Want No Huns. I almost said welcome back to From Huns to Humans. Wait, I'm not recording on my end, so let me do this real quick. We're gonna start it all over again. You're all getting the nitty gritty of okay. All right. Hello everybody, and welcome back to I Don't Want No Huns. My name is Mallory. I'm a wife, a mother of two, and a part-time YouTube commentator. I'm going to mute my phone. Full-time music teacher, part-time YouTube commentator on all things anti-MLM. Today, I am joined by. Boy, I really should have written out a script. I'm clearly not ready. I'm joined by my good friend Danielle. You may know her on Instagram and on her podcast as From Huns to Humans. Hello, Danielle.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mallory.
So today we are doing a reaction video to a live, I believe it was on Instagram. Yeah, it looks like Instagram. That was sent to me for Saint makeup. And if you know anything about Saint makeup, especially if you follow Isabel Lanter, which I will tag the Saint deep dive in the comments below. If you know anything about Saint makeup, it is really crazy. A lot of the things that go on with this, but we discovered a woman here, always Lauren Chamberlain, who was bringing on a Dr. Taylor Day, a licensed psychologist. So her caption says, to talk about mindset. It says right here, listen to Dr. Taylor Day, a licensed psychologist and Saint artist, about understanding your thoughts and how to better build your social selling business by understanding transactional and transformational processes. The reason this became particularly interesting for me is because when I looked up Dr. Taylor Day, she is from my area. She is in my city that I live. And so that became deeply personal for me for a lot of reasons, which you don't necessarily need to get into. But so the reason that then we felt really, we really wanted to react to this for a couple of different reasons. One, looking at the ethical lines of using your professional life to justify your side hustle. And then two, for those of you that know Danielle, she is a therapist. Danielle, if you want to talk a little bit about your background and your disclaimers and things that you always say on your podcast.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor in the state of Massachusetts. Anything that I say here is not for diagnosing or for treatment. And also, this is me reacting as a human with specialized knowledge. I'm not at work. This is what me and Mallory do for our, passion projects. So, that's I guess that.
Right. So nothing that we're doing here is in any way attempting to diagnose. We are just reacting as humans. What did become interesting in all of this, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the email, and I think now you guys are really seeing a live, let me exit full screen for 1 second, how this is all going down. I posted about this on my Instagram. Some of you may have been aware of it already. And if you're putting in the chat, I can't really, well, maybe I'll leave the chat here. I'll leave it like this. I posted about it in my Instagram, and I was reached out to by an actual doctor of psychology, a licensed psychologist in another state. And so I sent her this video ahead of time, and she provided us with her notes, because one of the things that Danielle and I talked about is that Danielle does not have this level of degree. She is not she doesn't have a doctorate. Right. I don't have any kind of degree. I am very interested in this. I did just apply to get my master's in school counseling. So mental health and how, I know, I'm so excited. I hope I get in. So mental health and how it applies to MLM is very, very important to all of us. So what we're going to do is I've got the notes up from our licensed psychologist. Few things that I wanted to mention about her. And she talks about, I want to read this little section before we start to kind of give some perspective as to why somebody in this field might end up in an MLM. So this is her trying to not justify it, but explain it. The other thing I want to touch on before I get to my comments on the video are how it is possible / likely for someone in her position to get involved with an MLM. I obviously don't know much about her personal history, and I can only speculate, but I'll provide my education experience as a reference. It seems like she got involved with Saint about 2 years ago, which would have been near the end of her graduate school training. here is my story for perspective. And just to give you some like real quick knowledge, this psychologist did look up this particular doctor of psychology and did find out that she is not yet a licensed psychologist as this training presents her to be. So it was an incorrect, representation. So this woman says, I graduated from undergrad in 2010, master's in 2012, and then worked as a clinical research coordinator for 3 years. I started my PhD program in 2015 with a meager savings, but no student loans. I went to a cheap undergrad and master's program and had tremendous help from my parents. Again, there is my privilege sneaking through. So she is acknowledging that she had a lot of privilege that helped her get where she is. Many PhD programs provide at least partial funding for graduate students in exchange for working as a TA, research assistant, or graduate assistant. She went to Florida University. This is this Dr. Tay we're talking about, which is a great program. So likely she was fully funded. Everyone in my program, I'm not going to name where this doctor is from, was fully funded. So for myself and everyone in my program, I worked as a TA and my tuition was waived, which was awesome. Now you make very little money as a TA, and it is hard to live off of that. I made about $22,000 a year as a TA and only got paid during the fall and spring semester. So I had no income during the summer. I did get a fellowship one summer, so I got about $3,500. Per my TA agreement during the traditional school year, I was not supposed to have any job more than 10 hours a week outside of my field. For 2 years, I worked as a research assistant at the medical college of blank for 10 years per week to make some extra cash. And honestly, grad school is so busy, there's no way I would have had time for more than that. During the summer to survive, I worked at various festivals around the area, pouring beer and bartending. Our area loves festivals and beer. Well, I feel like that's my area too. So that's totally cool, especially where Danielle's from. My point of all this is people can be desperate to make more money. I can see for some people how starting a side hustle in an MLM would sound like a good way to make some money. Also, you'd think it'd get better when you do your residency, but it doesn't. And she goes on to talk a little bit more about this. So all this to say, and this also goes for teachers, like we don't make a lot of money. Like it's very well known that teachers make, pennies compared to what we really should.
Right. So I would like to say too, like, and that holds true for me too. Like when I started doing some of my MLMs, it was because I was in grad school and was working in community mental health and I wasn't making a lot of money. And they're like, you get to help people. And I was like, awesome. I love helping people. That's literally my jam.
Right. So before we get started, I do want to take a moment and shout out everybody that is here, especially I'm going to be totally bragger for a minute. My Barb super fan club members, Jana, Rugged. Hi. Hello. I'm so glad that you're here with us this morning. If I don't answer your comments, feel free to put things in the comments. We are recording my screen, so I will be editing and probably re-uploading this later. So if I don't get to your comments, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to really focus so that we don't drag this on forever. So let's go ahead and dive in. I think that she waits a little bit for Dr. Tay to show up. So let me see how far we need to go.
Hey, we're going to be talking about how to approach your fears in your social selling business. And I'm just waiting for Taylor. Taylor's going to be getting on with me in a little bit.
Let me skip ahead.
You
don't need to listen to her talk forever. There we go. All right.
Yeah. Some of it could be the ring light. It's almost dark here at 4:30. So
isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Oh God. I know.
Sorry.
Today.
Sorry if I'm late. It didn't notify me that you were.
Also, real quick, Danielle, did you watch the whole thing yet?
No, I think that you forgot to send this to me.
Okay, so we're kind of watching it live. This is our kind of gut reaction because I honestly couldn't. I was a little bit triggered when I first started watching it. So I have not watched all of it, but our licensed psychologist did. So we have her notes kind of and minute markers. All right, let's.
Also, I want to just point out these are both beautiful women. I think that's important to say because I know that they like to say that we say bad things about them, but beautiful women.
Well, and let me read you the final thoughts from our psychologist. Final thoughts. She is very likable and has beautiful presentation skills. She's a smart, beautiful, capable woman. She seems to be either ignoring her ability to manipulate people given her position of power and education or actively leaning into it. I would argue the former. So we don't think that she realizes what's going on. So let's go ahead and keep going. Yes, again, this is not us. So if this gets out to Dr. Taylor Day, you presented yourself as a psychologist. This is not about you and your looks. I do not hate you. I want to just preface that with, I have some very strong concerns about how you are using your doctorate. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Here we go.
Live. So, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh no.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. We were just chatting. I was talking about how I'm ready to get back into routine after the holidays.
Yeah.
And like, because I'm not a very rigid routine person, but then I kind of have this, like, had this 3-week span. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm more routine than oriented than I thought I was.
That's awesome. I'm having a little bit of the opposite problem right now where I think I want to get back, but I'm having a hard time getting back.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of working through that. I was talking about that in my stories that, I mean, you know, sometimes it's like, you got to just be aware of like, my brain wants to go to all or nothing. And like, I feel like this is so relevant to what we're going to talk about. And it's just like thinking about like, is that story serving me? Hi, Casey. And I realize it's not. So then I slow my brain down and be like, what can you tackle today versus feeling like everything needs to get done. Yep. So
go ahead, Danielle.
So I want to start off right away with the, what is this serving me? That is a really interesting thing that MLMs do. And they often will talk about like, is that serving you? Get rid of things that don't serve you. We can't, and like every single part of our life isn't going to be enjoyable. And that doesn't mean that we just push it aside and pretend it doesn't exist.
Well, absolutely. And I shared with our psychologist a post that Dr. Tay had posted yesterday where she's looking beautiful, posing, influencer look. And it's just like crazy because she says about serving us. The caption says, unpopular opinion, the toxic positivity culture is not serving us. And I sent this to my friend and I was like, who thinks that, who is that an unpopular opinion with? I don't think anybody that hears the word toxic is like, that serves me. I don't think that, especially in our like day and age right now, nobody is feeling like that's an unpopular opinion, but yeah.
Right. I think that there are things that, you know, that you yourself are doing in your life that you might be like, oh, that's not serving me, like working for an MLM. But in general, sorry, I'm antsy and I can't sit still ever. But like in general, I think that this like overarching use of things that are and aren't serving me is, I don't know. I don't love it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going.
Yes, yeah. I know that I've talked about that with you because I'm kind of like the same way. I'm like, I look at my to-do list and I'm that person where I get immediately overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, totally. It ebbs and flows. So yeah, but I can't believe it's the new year and excited to kick this off.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that I asked my community the other day, I was like, what kind of mindset things are you struggling with? And when I was talking to you about it, you're like, immediately there's a pattern, it's fear. So this is what we need to talk about in this live today.
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you that don't know me, I'll just do a quick introduction. I know Lauren went on her stories, but I am a psychologist. I primarily focus on little kids in terms of, I do a lot of research and clinical work. And then I also have a habits of thinking coaching business where I work with.
I'm going to go ahead and pause. I want to just preface, before we even decided to do this, and I had looked her up, I did email, and I'm just going to completely out myself because I think accountability is so crucial. I did email her, the director of the program she works for, and just said, I have some very major concerns about this. And I said, you know, her presenting herself as a licensed psychologist with this mindset training, and her Instagram profile no longer says licensed psychologist. It just says mindset coach. But to say I am a psychologist, I think that's, especially because this says a licensed psychologist. She is not licensed yet. She's a doctoral scholar. And the one thing, and I want to just go ahead and say this, the one thing that her boss, the director of the program, did say to me is that she is excellent at her actual job, but this woman does not have Instagram. She doesn't know much about her side business. And she said, I just want to assure you that, Dr. Day is excellent at what she does. And I was like, I'm not trying to say she's not excellent at what she actually does. I have concerns about how she's using what she does in this side hustle. So then I want to just read some of these comments. So then our psychologist says, also, this mindset coaching thing is such BS. Seriously, what does that even mean? Her coaching business sounds a little more like scamming. So anything, Danielle?
So we see this all the time with people that aren't necessarily professionals, but a lot of them are like professionals in some way, where they all of a sudden, like, they leave their MLM and then they become coaches on the side. And I don't know if that's like what her coaching business is about, but like, I don't know, if you have if you're a doctoral scholar in psychology, why would you want to be a coach like that? Like, it's pretty well known throughout the psychology world that we are not big fans of life coaches and things like that, because it feels like discounted therapy.
Right.
And we don't love that, because it's
the only life coach I want is Jackie from the Connors, or Roseanne. That's the life coach I want. If anybody watches Roseanne / now the Connors, that's the life coach I want. I want Jackie because she's unstable and crazy, just like me. All right, let's go.
A lot of women, and one of my areas is working with network marketers, because I myself am a network marketer. And so this is stuff that I do with my team and that I see has so much impact. And it's really focusing on what we call the transformational side of things, that mindset piece, but also understanding how your brain thinks when you go to hop into these transactional pieces, like what to do, like what do I post on Instagram?
I love it when network marketers will call themselves out on things. We are already owning up to the fact that you are using your relationships with people as transactions. That's all.
Okay.
Instagram, how often should I go live, or, should I message people? All the things that Lauren covers. And so we had a conversation, and it's like the transformational and transactional pieces just blend so harmoniously together. And when Lauren asked, like, what are people needing, help on, this idea of fear came up. And it was like fear of like being that girl or being that person, or, and all of this. And some of it is you can tackle it from a transactional side, and we still have to in some ways, but it's also being aware of that thought pattern that is coming up as well.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause. Go ahead, you give your thoughts. I'm going to read our psychologist's thoughts.
Yeah, so my thoughts are very similar to what our psychologist has to say. The fear that she is talking about, that fear of being that girl or that person, that's a legitimate like thing in our brain that's saying, wait, hold on, should you do this? Because why? Because people might think you're annoying, because people might think that you're trying to scam them, because people think that you're trying to get money from them, because people think that you're desperate, because people think that
here's our comments from our psychologist. Fear is a good thing much of the time. It keeps us safe. When she talks about the transformational side of things, I'll give her credit that she's going beyond just saying ignore the fear, and including examples of why people might be fearful of sending DMs or why they might be resistant. However, she seems to be dismissing these reasons people don't want to send DMs. The language and flippant way she's speaking about it comes across as dismissive and minimizing to me.
Yeah.
So,
I don't love it. Fear is important. And if you're having that gut feeling that's saying, hey, I don't know if I should do this, you should explore that and potentially listen to it.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Well, so that you can start to shift that.
So when you're talking about transactional versus transformational, and I know when I was having this conversation with you, I was like, oh my gosh, I had never even thought of it like that. Can you explain kind of the difference between the two?
Absolutely. So I'll use an example because I think that's the best way to contextualize it. So fear of like sending DMs, for example, this is something that we talk about on my team quite a bit. And again, it's not, there's so many different approaches out there. So I'm not going to speak on that, but whatever your approach is. So, you know, one lady on my team, I have all women on my team. So one lady on my team might be like, well, I'm scared to do it. And then another person also might say, I'm scared to do it. But the reasoning behind being scared to do it could be completely different. And so sometimes when we only focus on that transactional, which would be go send the message, right? Just do it, just jump in. Sometimes we're not realizing what's going on. So the transformational side of things would say, what's the mindset or the thought pattern holding that person back? For one person, it might be fear of being that girl, like not wanting to come across spammy or, you know, worrying about what other people think about us. That's one side. Another example that might pop up is just being like, I am terrified to hear the word no. And it's like, those are two different things. And how we go through those is and unpack those is so, so important. And yes, by doing the action, by sending the message, you might in the process actually work on the transformational side of things. But it's really the transformational becomes so important when you're feeling stuck. So your upline or someone that, you know, like you, like Lauren, if you're in the collective and you're like, well, she's telling me send the message. If you can't get yourself to do it, that is like a doorbell of being like, let's explore what's holding you back. And that's what the transformational side of things is.
Okay, so I want to read the comments about that specific, that doorbell. When she says that's the doorbell, my thought is she's immediately assuming that resistance needs to be pushed through and moved aside so people can send DMs. She is determining what people should do. She is limiting their autonomy to make their own decision. For example, there are lots of times in therapy, I hear things a teenager or kiddo do or don't want to do, and my job is often not to tell them what to do. Like if a teenager wants to break up with her boyfriend, as long as he's not abusive, I might think he's a bad word, happens all the time, and she should break up with him. But my job in that situation is to help her explore her feelings and thoughts around the situation, and if the decision she makes aligns with her values. So to just tell someone to push through it when at their very core, sending a DM, trying to reach out to somebody might not align with their values. That's, again, going back to, that's not serving anyone. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, she summed it up pretty well. Again, like I thought the same thing. Like she says this doorbell thing, and I'm like, yeah, the doorbell being like, don't answer it. I'm a serial killer.
Right, exactly. Okay.
I mean, serial killers won't ring your doorbell. But
Yes.
like
So pretty quickly, I'm going to pause again pretty soon, everyone, because the comments that our psychologist gives on what she's about to say next are, I think, pretty great. And there's a follow-up to it.
I know, and when we had this conversation before, and because I took the habit test, which was like the hardest assessment I think I had ever taken, just because I was like, I have never like asked questions like this before and like how to rate it. And this assessment that you have is to just see how your brain works. And I told you, I was like, yeah, I'm always that person. I'm like, this is what you need to do, and this is what's going to help you to get the result. And you're like, yeah, I can see that that's how you are, and why you say that you're not like the mindset person to go to, because you're like, I can see how your brain is very much like forward, like in that sense. So can you talk a little bit about how everyone's like, where there's certain, I guess, areas where, and like different examples of how people can approach, like, I don't know, I guess I would even say some of the things that we had talked about, like being that girl, or having people like maybe like negative comments, or kind of just some brains and different approaches, I guess.
Okay, so let me talk about the habit test. She says, sorry, and everyone, sorry if you're like, oh, Mallory's doing so much talking with the psychologist. Listen, she's like way more, this is just what it's going to be. Okay.
No, I think that it's really helpful to have that. And, you know, we can just add in our 2 cents.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know half of the things that she's saying. So it was really good to have this. So she says, habit test assessment sounds like pseudoscience and not validated. Habits of behavior assessment, I think, is what she called it. I looked at the website she referenced, habitfinder.com, to look to see if there was a citation for any peer-reviewed research. Nothing. I called. I think I freaked out the lady that answered the phone, who said, "No one in my 12 years of working here has asked for this." She suggested I contact Paul Blanchard and email them. So, sounds like BS with no research behind it. I took it. It's just terrible. Seriously, take it. I laughed at it. Note about Myers-Briggs. This is not peer-reviewed, validated measures. There is no science behind it, and her mentioning it makes her seem less credible to me. I hate when people try to talk to me about their Myers-Briggs results. So, and then she says, also the MLM color personality BS is so irritating. So I think that she's about to talk about these things. And she emailed me another update. She said, they sent me an email titled Red Flags for Eva Igler, soliciting for me to make an appointment for a free one-time consultation. Debating on doing it, but I'm a terrible liar and actor. So it basically is like, you might as well just go do a BuzzFeed quiz and find out your personality to help yourself in network marketing. Anything, Danielle, before I hit play so we can listen to what she says about it?
So, I mean, just comments on those things too. Like, I agree. Those things are not very valid. The only reason, like, if my clients came to me with their Myers-Briggs or their color personality or whatever, like, I try to see what they get out of it, you know, like, why did you relate to this? And like, that's the most important part, is like what you're relating out of it and what you're getting out of it. So like, it can be useful in like a clinical setting just to kind of see your client's perspective.
Right.
But like with any sort of my brain just stopped.
No, I totally understand. While you collect your brains, just because we've had a lot of people join us in the past like 10 minutes, I just want to repreface, we are doing a reaction to a doctoral scholar in psychology that has presented herself as a licensed psychologist. And we are breaking down not anything about who she is, but how she is using her degree, her doctorate degree, to manipulate people in network marketing, just so everybody that's coming in can kind of get a quick feel of what's going on here. Okay, let's keep going.
I guess I don't even know what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I think I get what you're asking.
You're saying, okay.
Yeah. So first off, the assessment that she's talking about is a habits of thinking assessment. So it's unlike any other thing that you're going to take, unlike a personality test or like an Enneagram or like a Myers-Briggs. It literally gets into your thought patterns. So if you're interested in something like that, just send me a DM. It's a free assessment from Habit Finder, is the company who developed it. So hundreds of thousands of people have taken it.
I just want to like one more time preface, Habit Finder has no peer-reviewed research. It's a BS website. And the woman who worked for it said nobody has ever asked for any kind of peer-reviewed citation. So the fact that she's even recommending that is completely questionable to me. And so as someone who lives in this area with a child who, you know, has ADHD, and, you know, I have ADHD, I would not want to send my child to her seeing this out in the public. It doesn't matter to me what she does actually in the office. Now that she's putting this out in the public, and I am somebody who, you know, does my research and critically thinks, I would not want to send my child to her.
This assessment. It's like a legit tool. And I will say, as a psychologist, I had to make sure that I believed in the tool before I was ever willing to market it. But I think that it's so important to understand how your individual brain thinks. But even from an aside of like, say you don't want to go that route, totally fine. Let's just talk about, you know, how we start to become more aware of.
I'm just going to pause for one more second because I was looking over what she says more about the test. She comments and says that she says, maybe I'm looking at something different, but it doesn't seem like it. She definitely disagrees with her calling it a legit assessment. She said, and oh my God, the results I got, I have no idea how they could possibly know that much about me from the short assessment. For reference, the assessment for her area, which is the gold standard for personality testing in adolescents, takes 45 to 60 minutes and has years and years of research behind it. So for her to like to say that this is a legit test when it just doesn't, there's no backing to it, is really problematic for me.
What truly is going on in our brain. And I think the first thing that it sounds counterintuitive or kind of like circular, but is to become more aware. It's just like taking a pause and asking yourself, like, what stories am I telling myself right now? Or what thoughts are popping up? And that can be a really foreign feeling for someone who's never done any mindset work before. It's kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just doing it. So journaling can be super, super helpful. Putting pen to paper, the way our brain works and our brain is wired, the area of our brain that we process our thinking in is very different. Like our cognitive thinking is very different than where we process things when we write things down.
Just to pause, she says, I don't understand this cognitive thinking and when we write things down. Is she talking about where we process language versus written language? Then yes, but cognition is involved in both of these. If anything, this is an oversimplified version of this, and I'm not following her logic, which I think that that's the point. I think whether it's intentional or not, I think the point is to throw a lot of big words out and people be like, yeah, that makes sense. I got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I do agree. And I know our psychologist agrees too. Journaling can be helpful.
Yes, she totally agrees. Journaling can be, but it's only for some people. Journaling for me, not helpful.
Yeah, no, it's not helpful for everyone. I can't even get myself to sit down for 5 minutes to journal. So like,
yeah, I know.
Write it down. Start saying, okay, I'm feeling stuck right now. What's going on? And just rewrite. That's a great way to see what's popping up for you. But I think some of it is to become more aware. So saying, I'm fearful of like, I don't remember some of the other examples. I'm blanking, but like do you have other ones?
There was one where it was like
Yes.
writing captions. Like I'm not good at writing captions the right way.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. So that was what I would call a story. I'm not good at writing captions, right? That right there, putting that, you wrote it down in the little question box, and that's writing it down. Now, whoever wrote that, and this is true for anyone, whoever wrote that is now aware of what you are telling yourself. I'm not good at creating captions, writing captions. What that does, we know from decades upon decades of research that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are highly, highly interconnected. If you are not getting the result you want and doing the behavior you want to do, writing captions, that is because there's some sort of thought or what I like to call story linked to it. And that story of I'm not good at writing it. Do you think you're going to be willing to put yourself out there and attempt it when you're telling yourself you're bad at it? No. Like no one likes to do something that they feel bad at. So what I like to do, and I'm going to go on a very quick rant about this. I do not believe in doing like flipping it to the positive. Like I'm great at writing captions. Unless that feels authentic to you, here's why. Your brain is going to know that that's a fraudulent thought. It's going to be like, at the subconscious level, it's going to be like, yeah, I'm telling myself this, but I don't believe it. And deep down, you're still going to think you're bad at writing captions. And so this is one of my things is flip it to a realistic thought of something like I'm learning to write better captions, or I'm growing and practicing, and eventually my captions will get there. But what that's doing is it's telling you that there's a process behind it. It's not good versus bad. It's this gray area of you are going to work to
talk about a gray area. So I want to comment. So she talks about how what she's doing here is laying the groundwork for thought challenging. Again, she is providing the listeners with a thought she wants you to have. I'm learning to write better captions. Now, this is an example, so we get that she's giving an example. But what she is ignoring here is the feeling that goes along with this. So what we're arguing is asking the question, is writing captions for whatever purpose aligning with my values? So we're kind of just ignoring like why anybody needs to write these captions. Why? And then what we've seen in captions is a lot of lying, a lot of like, well, I'm just going to like tweak this here, tweak that there. So she says, what are the long and short-term consequences, and does it matter? You could also argue that she is teaching people how to manipulate their own thinking in order to get them to do things their upline wants them to do. She is not addressing what I'm thinking, which is, why the F do you want to write captions anyway? Any thoughts?
And yeah, I definitely see the groundwork here for like some cognitive behavioral therapy, like changing your thoughts and everything. I feel it feels icky. Like it just feels icky.
Yes. And also, for those of you watching, I do have the comments up. I can see the comments. So if you do want to drop a comment, please feel free, because I made it so that I can see the comments better. So if any thoughts, please let us know.
Get to writing good captions. And so that is some of it. It's recognizing the story is what we just did there. We're noticing how it's impacting the action. We're asking ourselves, what do we actually want the action to be, which is writing caption, and we're switching to a story that actually is going to serve us in the
serve the person or serve you, their upline. That's the question. Who is it serving?
process.
I love that. So let me ask you this, in terms of being self-aware, do some brains just...
And I just want to pause because at 13:38, she says, my current feelings, annoyed, furious, frustrated. My thought, this is getting manipulative, Dr. Tay.
have a hard time like getting to that self-awareness to be like, okay, maybe I then like accept the fact like, okay, I'm not really good at writing captions right now, and that's okay. And it's okay for me to like, do some people have a hard time getting to that point? Is that like a whole nother step to get to, you know, that ultimate of overcoming the struggle that you're having?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a two-part answer. One, I think it's a habit in itself to practice to be aware. Sometimes it's not like you're aware. Some people get there a little quicker than others. But the other piece of this is if you notice yourself really struggling to identify those stories, and I promise this isn't like a promotional pitch, but I will tell you that this is where hiring someone to help you see your blind spots is so, so critical. Because I promise you, until you work through those stories and until you can build the awareness.
Go see a therapist. Go see a therapist. Why would, if you have blind spots in your life, why would you hire some sort like?
Because you want to know why? Because people who are higher ups in multi-level marketing, people who don't have any other job but multi-level marketing, they don't have benefits. They don't have health insurance to go get a therapist that would be covered under their health insurance. So that's where I think, that just dawned on me. That might be why mindset coaches are actually doing well, because they are being hired by network marketers who don't have health insurance benefits.
Maybe
Maybe that's what this is. Maybe we're like going about making a living all wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I should just scrap my degree.
Right, just screw your degree. I can motivate the crap out of you.
Yeah, you can.
Have to have awareness before change. You're not going to like make this huge change without becoming aware first. And so if you notice you're really struggling to get there, there's something more to that. For example, there could be something with how your brain thinks, and some of it could be shaped by past experiences, that you go into immediate protection mode and self-preservation mode, where it's like, no, I can't go there. That's dangerous. Your brain, you've developed a habit of thinking that has this story that it's dangerous to even go to that awareness place. So it's like, yes, you can build the habit, and you have to also, some habits in of itself then ultimately block you from being aware. And those are things you have to work through.
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this stuff all day long, just because when I first started talking, I think this was like 3 weeks ago when I took the assessment and we started talking, and I was just like, I literally had no idea it was this. And what's kind of comforting, especially for me, is that it really is a process. And I think it is, like you said, like for me, for my brain, it's really easy for me to grasp, and it's something that I could easily do. I've never been this.
Okay, so what's interesting here is that what she's talking about is like maladaptive thoughts or like thinking traps. And those are like a double-edged sword, right? We don't want to fall into thinking traps where things are like, for example, I'm going to use what I'm currently working on in therapy, which is my all or nothing thinking. For me, it's like if I work really hard all day and I ate well and I exercised, and at the end of the day, I have a bowl of chips, my brain usually goes, well, my diet's ruined. I might as well just screw it. It's over. Instead of just being like, okay, I had a bowl of chips. I had right. Okay. So falling into that thinking trap. But to go to a super extreme, and I don't know why I always do this. So a trigger warning, I'm about to say something maybe a little extreme. But again, if I dated someone, which I did, who was emotionally abusive to me, and then I allowed, I went back into this thinking trap of I don't want to think back to the times where it was okay and everything was all right. So I go back with that person. There's differences of allowing negative thoughts or feelings to remind you, or if I get with what am I trying to say? If I get with a new person and they start demonstrating behaviors from the previous relationship and saying oh, well, it's going to be different. You don't want to fall into those kind of thinking traps. But there's a Just Jake says dropping a 1. You're so funny. But there's different types of ways where you can use your past experiences and what our brain is telling us to not do something that is wrong, right? To remind yourself this is not okay to do because of whatever. Is what I just said make sense? I don't know.
What I was thinking was your brain is sending you red flags,
right?
And you can either take them, accept them, and say, you know what, that's a logical red flag,
right?
I'm going to put this red flag in my peripherals and keep seeing if I see more red flags, but I want to continue. Or you can say, that's enough. That red flag is enough. Goodbye.
Right. And she says they are creating groundwork, and this is exactly right. They are creating groundwork for people to shut down or reframe any thought that might tell them to not send a hey girl or DM to recruit someone.
Right. And what they're doing is they're taking their red flags and they are throwing them in the trash.
Right. Exactly.
Someone who can just flip it on and do oh, it's positive and everything's happy and this is just what I'm going to do, or fake it till you make it kind of thing. I really love how it's really in this is who you are, and these are the steps that we can take to get you outside of your comfort zone. Because and there is, I think it's just a good way to approach it, because of course there's there's good fear when you're trying to step outside of your comfort zone, and then of course there's bad fear that you really need to listen to in terms of oh yeah, don't cross the road and there's a car coming kind of.
Yes, don't cross the road, don't join a network marketing company.
So here's our psychologist comment on that. Fear is neither good nor bad. Fear is fear. And maybe your comfort zone is there for a reason. Who are they to tell you what you should push past and what you shouldn't? And she says, I hate this. I hate all of this. I've never spoken to her on the phone, but I can just I hate this. I just feel like I can hear her saying it.
But is there anything else that you wanted to add in? I don't know if we wanted to see if there's anyone who had questions inside the, who's watching right now.
Yeah, we could totally do questions. And while those are rolling in, the one piece that I will also say is talking specifically about fear. Fear is just a signal that you're going outside of your comfort zone. That's all it ultimately is. And we have to be willing to lean into the.
So she says, and I just want to read it. Oh, my dear baby Jesus. This is not what fear is. Fear is not that simple. What if I saw a bear in my backyard? Is that fear just a signal that I was out of my comfort zone? No, that is fear that there is a bear and I need to make sure myself and others are safe. Fear is super adaptive and important. Saying it is a signal you're going outside of your comfort zone is super simplistic and misleading. Girl, stop. You should know better. I love my new friend. I really do.
Fear in order to grow. You will not feel fear inside of your comfort bubble. It's going to feel nice and warm and squishy, and you're going to be like, I just want to stay here. And that's okay if that's your goal. But then a lot of times what I find, especially in network marketing, because this is kind of a business where we learn to develop and grow as we're sharing our products and programs and so forth, is that people really don't want to stay in their comfort zone. But they tell themselves, okay, well, I'm scared. That's a reason to stay here. And what I would challenge is you got to start to push yourself. But for some people, you have to be willing to take some action to get there. But your action step has to be individualized. So
comments, and anybody that's watching, if you have thoughts, please leave them in the comments. She says people don't want to stay in their comfort zone because you and their uplines are telling them that they don't want to. Also, what does it say about a job in which, according to this, people are always fearful? I have had a lot of anxiety surrounding my job. My first therapy session in grad school, I was very anxious, but also had some confidence because of all the work I had done up to that point. And now I am often barely anxious, if at all. When I meet a new patient, it is not a bad thing, and I'm not anxious anymore. I'm sure Danielle can relate to this. Like, that's the thing. And you don't need, and she says, you do not have to lean into fear to grow. That can happen, but you do not have to in many situations. She's conflating fear and anxiety, and they are different. So, anything here?
Again, she just says it so nicely and more eloquently than I ever probably could. But yeah,
yeah, let's keep going.
How do you watch these all the time?
Yeah, she literally said, how do you watch this all the time? I'm like, I don't know. Because this is why I created a YouTube channel, so that I could about these things. Okay.
Some people, and like I said, I have a team. I know them. I can say, so-and-so, just go do it. And I know that's because their mind.
She says being on her team must be a nightmare. I'm sure it's a constant mind. She's applying her training to get her team to do things that benefit her. Unethical, Taylor. It's like, yeah, okay.
Honestly, I just feel so much manipulation coming through all of this. Like, it just doesn't feel good. And like, I know that if she watches this back, she's going to be like, what manipulation? She's not going to see it.
I don't think she'll see it.
I don't think she will. Because when you're in, you are brainwashed and you think that what you're doing is right. And girl, I get it.
Right. Jana says they want you to not think about exposing your trauma. Don't be afraid. Just do it.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And their transformational way of thinking is in a place that if they go do it, they're going to be able to respond to that and be like, okay, like, you're right. I need to keep doing that. For other people, though, it's going to create more of a wall for them, like a wall of resistance to that thing. So one example is going live. I'm in a makeup business and we demo the makeup all the time. And again, some people I can just say, just go do it, and they will do it. Other people, they'll go do it and they will feel so much fear. I don't know why that's so hard.
So I want to adjust this or show this comment. Does her state not have a law and ethics exam? Oh, I didn't know I could do this. That's cool. Does her state not have a law and ethics exam? How did she pass it? So what my psychologist friend did send to me is a lot of the PA standards and saying that her marketing herself as a psychologist without having the licensure does go against their standards. So it is definitely possible that, and I also would have to wonder if the licensure process and the ethics exam has not adapted to this. I wonder if they've not even considered what is ethical in the internet if what is ethical in this realm of the internet and instant in social media. So here's what she says. I want to comment on her saying like, just go do it, and exposure. Like, she's basically talking about exposure therapy. Like, you just do it over and over again. She says, she loves exposure therapy. She does it all the time. Needle phobia is like a big one that she sees all the time. The big difference is them getting over fear, and them getting over their fear it's not directly a financial benefit to the therapist. It is their goal. They came to me with it's the goal they came to her with. It sounds like she's using this technique to get people in her team to do things that, yes, they likely want to do, but directly it's benefiting her. So she's saying, she's basically being a psychologist therapist for them. This is very problematic.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Like, her trying to get her team to go live is directly benefiting her finances. Like,
yep.
That it will literally paralyze them in the sense they might get through the live, but there was way too much fear. And so
Yeah.
then they don't want to do it again because it was a horrible experience. So what I will say in that situation, and this is true for anyone, break it into manageable chunks where it starts to become a little bit uncomfortable for you, but not so much that you're in this state of paralysis and you're flooding in and realizing that you can't handle it. There's a lot of biological reasons I won't go into right now. But an example of going live, for example, I will tell people sometimes just film a pre-recorded video and then post that. Some people, that's good. Some people, I say, just film a pre-recorded, like film yourself. Go put on your makeup.
Is there any way that you can turn those off?
Yeah, I was trying to show a few. Yeah, I can turn them off.
I like can't focus on both.
I get distracted. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you.
I'm new to YouTube.
Well, but this is like in StreamYard too. So, okay. Sorry, was that all you wanted to say?
Yes.
Was I distracting you? Okay, sorry.
Go film yourself. You're not going to post it. And that is the mindset I want them to go into this with, is I'm just exposing myself to this feared stimulus of being on camera, but it feels a little safe because I know I don't have to post it. And then we'll evaluate, like, how are you feeling about that? Do you want to post it? But we're breaking it down into actionable steps. So that's the one thing I will say is there is good fear, but it's good fear because it's making you more aware of where you need to grow into, and you can handle it when you break it down into small, manageable chunks.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because
Did you want me to pause?
I think that what's happening here is, like, I think that she's confusing fear and anxiety. There is like a good manageable amount of anxiety. Like, example, you have a test coming up, and because you have a little bit of anxiety about the test, you're going to use that anxiety to help you study so that way you do well on your test.
Right. Exactly.
Example of how to use your anxiety for positiveness. Again, as our doctor friend said, there is no good and bad fear.
Right.
network marketing, social selling, the large majority who enter into the industry, you don't have sales experience. You're not a content creator. I mean, you are just, it's open to anyone to come in and learn. And it is kind of like drinking through a fire hose, especially if you're just getting into it. And I think that.
What a terrible analogy. Cause like,
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what?
Because like, who wants to drink through a fire hose ever? Like, and that's not something that eventually you'll get to manage. Like, it's not like you're like, oh yeah, we drink through fire hoses all the time here. Eventually you get used to it just like knocking you across the yard, and you'll be able to like control the water and get your mouth wide enough to just like that. What a drinking through a fire hose.
Your mouth wide enough for what?
I'm trying to like not be. I don't want anybody telling me that I sound like Jessie Lee.
Just letting people know that meeting, especially with how you said individualism, like meeting you where you're at, and then having those simple steps to keep moving forward, because it really is a journey, and this takes time, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about like the process of going and kind of like going live, like doing the little baby steps. Like, is there a time frame that you would tell people to allow to give themselves?
So not a time frame, and I will say this is consistent with what's done on the therapy side of things called cognitive behavioral therapy, and exposure is part of it. And so while you're not working with a therapist, and obviously I have to make this disclaimer, if you have fear so much that you can't take any action steps and it's completely paralyzing you, this could be a sign of anxiety.
She says that disclosure was way too late, girl. And I agree. And I also wanted to, I'm going to pull up this comment here. This commenter, I don't know how to say that username, so I'm not even going to try. Somebody with a PhD here regarding ethics. Only when I worked at a fancy university, I had to sign a not to talk about my research for money, but otherwise in other places, it would not get me in trouble. And I think that that's interesting. Because even if it doesn't get you in trouble, I still don't think that means it's not unethical. I think it's still unethical, regardless.
And that is something that can be worked on. But what we can do in terms of, for the majority of people, is take the principles and apply them here. And what the principle would say is you want to go to the point where it starts to get comfortable. So for that person that I am telling themselves, just record yourself. That's all I want you to do. If after the third time they're like, that wasn't bad at all, that's a sign you need to move on. We got to go to record and post now.
So she says, you need to move on. I have an issue with language like this, particularly coming from her, since she would be their upline. If this was therapy, which it is not, you work together with your patient to decide how to move on. So again, and it all brings it back to, you're encouraging people to work through fears or hangups that ultimately benefit you. You're manipulating people to want to join your team because of how you're helping them. But at the end of the day, that's what's benefiting your paycheck. So it just gets very frustrating.
Very.
And she also says the principles here she's talking about are totally accurate. Again, my issue is maybe the fear is there for a reason, and she's assuming the fear is not valid or it is something that you should push through.
Right.
And
exactly.
that fear is going to come rushing back in. But what you learned in the first step is you told your brain subconsciously, you're not literally saying this out loud, but you're telling your brain, listen, I can handle this. And you're also telling your physiological system where that fight or flight kicks in, you're telling it like, relax, there is no true danger here. But when we take another step, it feels like the danger is there again. And so then we have to train our brain on that step. So the point to move on is when it starts to feel here. But
so again, this is like real words, like again, where I'm trying to not like use too many wordy words. That's why I'm tripping even more, because I'm overthinking. But anyways, so
Wordy words. Let's not use wordy words.
The wordy words. But like what she's saying is true. Again, I wouldn't apply it to fear. I would apply it to anxiety. But also there is legitimate fear here. There's legitimate fear of debt. There's losing your friends. There are so many things
Right.
that are actually fearful in this situation that could really impact your life.
Absolutely.
You should listen to that fear.
Yes. But, as we saw in the live that I reacted to yesterday, don't Google things. Only talk to the person who is, recruiting you. Don't Google anything. Don't talk to anyone else except for the people don't talk to anyone else. Only talk to your upline and the people in the business.
Right.
When we take another step, it feels like the danger is there again. And so then we have to train our brain on that step. So the point to move on is when it starts to feel comfortable and you're like, I've got this. I know the tendency is to want to stay there. It's like, okay, I've got a good group. That's your sign to move on. So for some people, that could happen one time of doing each step. For other people, it might take 10 times to do each step before they're ready to move on.
So as I know, because you have a team, so how do you approach this as a leader, like to your team? Is there a way that, other network marketing leaders can help them better assess of, especially when people are just coming in?
Yeah. So a couple things, but the biggest kind of piece of all of this is what I'm going to say is to ask questions. You have to be willing to have an interaction with your downline and say to them, okay, you're saying you are scared to do this. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, tell me more is my favorite thing to say. If my team, some of them might be watching right now. I saw them on and they're always like, here she goes again. And they'll also say like, it helps them unpack things. So my role as a leader is to listen and help them explore what's holding them back and then give.
So the questions we have here are, what are you trying to teach them here? How to manipulate their downlines using therapy techniques? I somehow hate this more. How is this getting worse? It just is. Could this be considered a form of behavior control? I think so. I think that all MLM trainings are behavior control because they're not trainings. They're therapy. They're,
I agree. And also like, there's so much just like being thrown at here. Like I'm having a hard time keeping up with everything she's saying.
Right.
Again, this is my first time watching it. So like, I'm having a hard time and it's like, almost getting into that like word salad dinger for me, where she's just like saying so much stuff and using so many legitimate words, and my brain's like, what are you even talking about?
Right. Exactly.
Solutions. I think sometimes we want to jump in to the solution itself. Like, okay, you're scared of this. Let's go do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, again, you haven't really, one, given them a safe space to know that you're there to listen and help them process through that. Because you would want someone to do that for you. Jenny is on my team. Hi, Jenny. And then number two is, the other thing is when you're onboarding them, I like to get them on the phone right away and say to them, like, tell me about.
Oh no, it starts at onboarding. Let the manipulation begin. She says, I love the idea of asking for permission, but you are their upline and leader. This is a pseudo choice. How would you react if they said no? What a good question.
You tell me what's going to hold you back in this business. Asking those questions of getting to know them. And as we go, then I ask right away, do I have permission, to challenge you when things are getting hard and to help you explore your mindset? I will say I've never had anyone say no, but I think they all.
And she says, why do you think that is, Taylor? And what would happen if they did say no? How would she react?
Also know from my social media that this is how I approach leadership. I'm very open about that. But I always ask for permission, even when we're going into that, like, hey, are you willing to kind of work through this and discuss it? So I think that concept of asking questions and just being willing.
Like, yeah. So I feel like, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a downline getting challenged by an upline. And I feel like if I was in that position, I would feel like I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't feel like I had a choice, because there's so much love bombing. There's so much like, I'm just trying to help you. I just want you to do well, and I'm here for you, and I'm just trying to make sure that you make me money. So like, I'm just here for you.
And as we see, right. And as we see that if someone says no, if someone says, I can't be on all these Zooms, I can't be on your lives, I can't do all these things. And then if your downline comes to you and says, hey, I need help, like my business isn't going, they're going to say, well, you're not coming to the Zooms. Try to make it to those Zooms. You're not coming to the meetings. You're not doing all these things. So then they're going to put the blame right back on you, which I think is what we're about to experience here.
Willing to listen. So listening to understand the problem, not to problem solve. Problem solving can be great if it's at the right time. Otherwise, they're like, I'm going to ask a question. Obviously, it's rhetorical, but you can put in the chat. How many of you have asked someone, you've had a conversation, maybe your downline or a sideline, sister is like stuck. And then you're like, you have this conversation, you help them problem solve. You're feeling great about it. You're like, yeah, they're going to go do it. And then you check in with them in a couple days later, and they haven't done anything. Mm-hmm. That's a sign that we listen to problem solve and not listen to understand. So ask yourself that. And be like, how can I ask more questions to be able to help them understand what that thought pattern or what that transformational process that's going on before we hop to the transactional piece?
I could listen to you talk about this all day because I find it so
good. I'm like, I am talking.
She says, disagree. I would lose my mind if I listened to this all day. I just can't.
Talking so much. Sorry.
No, and I'm just like, keep on talking. Like, I just want to keep listening. No, it's so true though. And I remember, when we were talking a handful of weeks ago, it was like when I was talking about the collective and how it used to be like a 90-day program. And then it was like people would get through it and you would see that like paralyzed, like, okay, I have this information. I did this and now I've learned all of this, and like getting through it. And that's why I turned it into a community, just because there needs ongoing support, because like you said, it's different for everyone, and getting through, because ultimately this is a journey. It's
if I never heard anyone use the word it's a journey again, I think I've started using just the word trip, adventure. I cannot hear the word journey ever again. I'm starting a journey. Take a shot. Everybody, if you're doing this later, if you're watching the playback and Every time they use MLM buzzwords.
Marathon and it's not a sprint. And especially when you're talking about in this industry, when everyone's coming in at completely different levels and, completely different, seasons of life and things like that. But is there anything else that you wanted to add in? I don't know if there is. I think we covered pretty much everything. Like I said, I could hear you talk about it forever, but
yeah. Well, I want to make a comment really quick because you were talking about the collective and how you've now expanded it. So it's more of this community style. And I think it also parallels something that happens a lot with personal development. And I think self-development, personal development is something we hear about a lot in network marketing. You got to do it. And I think it's amazing. And I am such an advocate of this. But just like sometimes you take these courses where you just consume information and you don't apply it, the same is true. I see a lot with personal development, that it's all consumption and you're not actually integrating it into your life. And sadly, it doesn't work as well unless you actually try to apply it and integrate it. So that would be my one takeaway, just to be aware of. It's like, yes, it's good to work through that, but are you using it just as a crutch to say you're working your business, that you're busy, or are you trying to actually apply it? And a lot of times we don't want to apply it because that's where the discomfort lies. We start to realize we got to pay attention to what we're thinking, is that serving us? And it's like, well, my thoughts aren't. Okay, let me just avoid those. And it's like, no, lean into those and start tackling them.
Is there anything that you would recommend? Like, is this like a daily thing that you kind of check in with yourself to be self-aware? Is it a weekly thing? Do you have any tips there just to kind of work on that part? Because you need to have that self-awareness before you even move forward and changing, these thoughts and your habits.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I will say it's become a habit now. So I can literally, like, if you go watch my stories, I talked about it a little bit today, is I notice my brain going to this all or nothing thought pattern that is an old pattern for me. And it's not that that pattern's completely gone, but I have learned to rewire it. But in times of like stress and like feeling like I need to get everything done, that comes out. And now I'm able to kind of work myself through it pretty automatically. But
so and I agree with this. It's funny that she's bringing up all or nothing patterns of thinking, which I am very, like, that is my biggest thing I work on. Because in most MLMs, that's what they push. If you don't attend all of the all of the Zooms, if you don't do all of the things, all of the systems, you're not doing enough, and it's all or nothing.
One of the ways that I got there was actually trying to work on it daily. And what I find to be the most helpful is taking time to journal. I know we probably hear this time and time again, and it's like, oh yeah, you start at New Year's resolution, I'm going to start journaling, and then you don't do it. So even with that, build it up. So it's so easy to say, I'm going to do it daily. And then as soon as you fall off, that all or nothing pattern of thinking for a lot of people come in, it didn't work. I'm done. And it's kind of like, that attempt is over. So what I would say, just start once a week and see if you can get into that habit, and then bump it up to twice a week and seeing if you can get into the habit. Habits are not a light switch where you turn on and off. They're almost like those lights like that with a dial.
Oh, the dimmers.
The dimmers. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word.
That's okay.
You slowly have to turn the lights on. It's not just a normal switch. So
yeah, she's got comments on this too.
So first of all, I want to just speak on personal development. So pretty much one of my issues with any sort of therapeutic, anything that happens within MLMs, and like, this is why I have the issues with the therapy talks and like things like that, is that because there are so many dual relationships, that when you find out and figure out that you are being manipulated and you leave your MLM, you leave your commercial cult, any personal development that you do is going to be tainted and questioned, and is going to cause more issues for you than you potentially originally had. Right. And I have chills thinking about that, because there was so many things that I did there is a giant fly in here. Like so much of the personal development that I did when I was in network marketing, now I'm like, well, I learned that in network marketing doesn't have any validity to it. Like, I need to like go through all of that stuff that I thought I was like improving myself for, And actually, I don't know anymore. It's all tainted, and I'm very jaded by it.
Yeah, I mean, in the teaching profession, we have professional development, and I think that's just like it's the personal development is what network marketing has decided to brand. Let's keep moving here because we are running out of time.
All right.
Let go of like, you have to do it daily. Yes. Do I recommend getting there? Yeah, but work up to it. And start just practicing. The more practice, even if it's once a week, the more practice you get is getting you closer to your end result.
Right. That's awesome. Okay, so we can go and wrap it up.
Yes.
I'm excited to have you inside the collective.
Yeah.
And I want to say, is that Thursday? Yes, it's Thursday. So we're going to be diving into all of that. And then how can, if there's anyone who wants to take that assessment and kind of chat with you or work with you, like let's talk about how people can go about and do that.
Yeah. So feel free just to DM me and let me know you want to take the Habits of Thinking assessment. Like I said, that is completely free of charge. And then if you're interested in exploring how to work with me, what's going to happen? I'm going to predict this. You're going to take the test and you're going to be like, how is this so good? Or for the most part, then you might have some resistance. Oh, that's not me. And I guarantee that one you go to, that's not me, is the one that is like, that's your self-preservation mode, being like, no, I don't do that. So get a little curious, and then we can schedule just like a one-on-one time to go kind of through the assessment together and explore if coaching could be a good fit for you. All my coaching right now is one-on-one, and it's a 6-month time commitment because, again, it's like that.
And she throws the ball up, and there's the pitch.
Yeah.
Like now we've got a business pitch. It's a 6-month commitment. Again, it's like a huge pile of BS. This all seems like a great way to manipulate people. Also, it's what I would imagine you get back after you take the Scientology personality test. Where is Leah Remini? We need to compare notes.
Up with personal development. My goal is not just to pound you with information. There's so much of that already out there. My goal is to help you really understand how your brain is thinking, break those habits down. And I should say this, all habits of thinking, some of them really could be serving you. And we want to really emphasize those. We're going to focus mostly on the ones that are sabotaging you and see if we can start to shift those to serve you with whatever your goals are. It's very individualized, but it is a 6-month commitment because it takes time to change your habits of thinking. And so feel free to send me a DM. Even if you aren't interested in coaching right now, you just want to take the free assessment. That is also totally fine too. In the future, the plan is this year in 2022 to also have a group coaching model. So that might be an option for you in the future.
I'm so excited that you're doing this because when you first started talking about it, I'm like, nobody else is doing this. It's like underserved in this industry. And this is going to be what I do have.
What? It's underserved. Oh, come on.
One last question. You're talking about focusing on the ones that are sabotaging you. Because I know like after the assessment, like it'll tell you like where, like if you're in those unhealthy patterns. So how much focus do you give those versus like really leaning into what you're really good at? Like, can you give too much like focus where it's like overwhelming? Do you tackle one at a time? Like, or is it kind of just, how would you approach that?
It's a little hard of a question to answer because it's not a linear thing. It's not like we're taking one at a time and being like, we are only working on this one, because what we find is they're interconnected. I will give you a quick example that I find is interconnected all the time. So there's one thought pattern called fantastical. This means that your brain is able to really visualize what you want the future to look like, or it also can then go to the way of, this is the type of person that catastrophizes everything and worries about everything that could happen in the future. So that is one measurement. A lot of times, not always, we see this measure of called obsessive pop up. And what obsessive means in this context is that your brain has a really easy time thinking. Thinking comes easy and naturally. And so when we see this pattern of fantastical and obsessive together, a lot of times, again, not always, but a lot of times this is that pattern of catastrophizing and of being able to think really easily. So all the thoughts come in, you feel like you can't turn your brain off, and you're going to worst case scenario, and you're spending so much time in the future thinking about what could happen instead of staying kind of present focused. And so those are related. We would tackle those together. You know, it's really about how do we get you more aware that you're doing this? How do we be able, you know, to give you tools that you start to shift and you can say, oh, okay, like a brain dump, for example, is a great one. And the thing is, the tools are just the icing on top of the cake that you will learn through this approach. It's really about understanding exactly how your brain thinks and what's going to sabotage you.
Note from the psychologist, learning exactly how your brain thinks. Taylor, you should know better than to talk in absolutes. Really, you're going to help people know exactly how their brain thinks. Come on.
And so we do tend to lean more into those things that are not serving us because that's where we're going to see the most growth. But in the process too, you know, say there is a measurement that, you know, you are really organized. Well, let's use that to your advantage. Okay, how can we tackle these like catastrophic thoughts and use your expertise in organization, you know? And maybe this is like teaching you how to have a to-do list in a certain way that really seems to serve you and that slows that thought pattern down. So it's a hard yes or no question to answer. Yeah. It's not linear, but we do tend to focus more on those. I like to call them growth areas. Rather, it's not like we're just focusing on negative things. And I am a huge, huge believer, if you were to ask like my team or any of my coaching clients, of celebrating the wins in the process, because you have to give your brain that stimulation that like, yes, you're progressing. Yes, you're doing this. And I think a lot of times those strengths come into celebrating the wins.
Yeah. And I would say too, I'm sure the goal is definitely not like, you're not going to come out as this like perfect human being in this like, you know, way. Like that's definitely not the goal.
Yeah.
It's
Speak for yourself. I'm kidding. There's like 2 minutes left. Not even, I can't even finish it because I need to wrap it up because I've got stuff to do. Danielle, I know you have stuff to do. And I'm sure all of the 57 people who have been on this, thank you for being here. So let me just wrap it up by saying this. I am doing this reaction with Danielle for no other purpose than, well, let's talk about a couple of reasons. Number one, to discuss the boundaries of ethics when using your professional life, your actual full-time job in your multi-level marketing company. Where is that boundary of what is ethical and what is appropriate? I think that because this is becoming so prevalent now in our day-to-day life, it would not be, it's not talked about enough. Two, it is my genuine hope that she sees this and she starts to rethink what it is she's doing and she stops. I do not endeavor by any means for her to lose her job, for her to suddenly not be a psychologist. If she is truly great at helping young children, specifically children who are autistic, we need these people to be in the industry. I'm not trying to stop anyone from being a psychologist. I am trying to stop everyone from network marketing, from multi-level marketing. It is my hope that she focuses on her actual career and realizes how this is unethical and crosses so many boundaries, it's just so problematic for so many reasons. And I hope that she will start to see that and leave the network marketing aside and then go do what she's good at and go help the children who need her. Because a lot of the things that our psychologist friend wrote in here is that she is smart, she is beautiful, she is capable, she has great presentation skills. I don't doubt that a child who would meet her would be like, I love Dr. Tay. I bet she is excellent at what she does with children. And I 100% can understand why she maybe doesn't see what it is she's doing. So that's my goal. I hope that that's what people take away from this. Of course, I'm sure somebody will be like, you bashed a therapist online and you hate her. I do not hate her. She lives probably 20 minutes from me. I could bump into her at any event downtown. Like we are in close proximity. I hope that she eventually sees that this is very problematic. And I'm going to continue to kind of follow up and see what she's doing over the years to see if eventually this stops and she just focuses on her psychology work.
Yeah.
Danielle, as we wrap up, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I definitely hope that she finishes out her doctoral scholar program and does get to be a licensed psychologist.
Absolutely.
Like, that's amazing. She is a very smart girl. I really hope that she knows that we're coming from a place of trying to help people and trying to help her if she sees this. And that's really it. And then I'm just going to shamelessly plug myself and say,
yes. So talking about, you want me to shamelessly plug you?
Sure.
Listen, if you've not been listening to Danielle's podcast, From Huns to Humans, it is an excellent podcast where she interviews people to talk about the connection between mental health and multi-level marketing and how it can prey on our disabilities, our mental health problems, or whatever. I was on it. We talked about my ADHD. So that's my plug. Danielle, you can probably say, you obviously can say more about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. And then I'm on Instagram from Huns to Humans, TikTok from Huns to Humans. Mallory is hopefully going to come back in March. We haven't actually talked about this, but to talk about faith manipulation.
Oh, yes. Faith manipulation is my jam. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a whole month on faith manipulation in March. So.
And one more plug. If you have not watched Amal Jane Williams video that she posted last night on the iGenius person who used the N-word and how they treated her when she tried to call them out, stop what you're doing right now. When you get off this live, go watch it. It's about 25 minutes. It is the most important video that you should watch today. That's all I'm going to say. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Danielle, thank you for doing this with me. And now I'm going to go eat lunch and watch Dexter, speaking of mentally ill people. All right. I love you all. Goodbye.
Goodbye.